Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, a special edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. I must say, I am your host, as always, with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiiipeno, or at L_Padres for memes and live tweet breakdowns and whatnot. Or you can see me on YouTube and see whatever shirt I'm wearing. Still the same shirt that I've been wearing for the past few episodes, but nonetheless, today is a special episode because I am being joined by for about the 15th time on this podcast.
I was going to say, so is it really that special?
Yeah, that's a good point. That voice you're hearing, he is the prospect guru. He is the co-founder of Just Baseball. He is the host of The Call-Up, a Locked On. Hold on. This is the hard part about introducing Aram, is that I mess up with all the things. He's doing a lot of baseball stuff. The Call-Up, Just Baseball show, writing for Just Baseball. He's a Twitter fiend. Aram Leighton. Sir, how are you doing today?
Good, man. Good. And you know, I think we gotta get it out before we start. Hey, what do you want me to introduce you guys? We're talking a lot of prospects today. We can lean more into the prospect side of things. Right. I know what prompted this one a little bit too was the article we put out on justbaseball.com, which was like trades we like to see. And I wanted to get the Padres some outfield help because I got to hear you complaining about it all the time in our staff chat. So, just for my well-being, I mocked a trade of an outfielder to the Padres. But the larger conversation about it and everything was that actually the Padres system has progressed really well over the last year or so. They've drafted really well. And, while we always joke about AJ Preller making trades, I think any team that's making trades or any team that's trying to stay in the hunt in one of baseball's best divisions is going to trade away some prospects. So it has been really good to see the Padres reload. And I think they've drafted really well. And I'm excited to kind of talk about that in the recent developments there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what prompted this is on top of the article, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show, talk about the player that you mocked to the Padres, which some people might not. I mean, his name has been coming up, I think, but a little bit underrated just because he's, not necessarily in the Padres circle and what have you. So we're going to talk about that, but we got to talk about the farm stuff too, because, you talk about it on the Call-Up podcast, which great name, unbelievable name for a podcast about prospects.
Thank you.
Really good stuff, I must say. But I got to ask you, one thing you've been dogging me over, because this is the key part for the listeners, is that, conspicuously, you love to leave out the fact that you, for years, have just been like, your farm sucks, man. Like, this farm stinks, man. Dude, Preller traded everything, man. And then all of a sudden, I get a text that's like, yo, this James Wood guy, yo, you know what? It's not that bad. You're a flippity flopper, Mr. Aram Leighton. So let's talk about it. We know about the top guys, obviously. We know about CJ Abrams. He had a little bit of not a little bit, but, he stumbled out of the gate. But he's also 12 years old, and he only played a little bit above AA ball. So not worried about that. Mackenzie Gore, Rookie of the Year candidate. We know about him. He's been fantastic. The fastball's great. All that stuff. All of you fickle fans out there who were removing him off the top 100 entirely for outfielders who can't hit.
We did not.
I know you
we
guys
did not
did
at Just Baseball.
Just Baseball, you guys did that. He was still on there. But some people, it's like, oh, I like this outfielder that can't hit. He's going to be in the top 20, right? Stuff like that happens, right? Yeah. But then Mackenzie Gore, he's gone after 3 months. But we know about those two guys already. And we kind of know about Luis Campusano, who I do want to ask you about. But what is, do you think, the headline guy that prompted you to text me, you know what? This system isn't that bad?
Well, okay, so here's the thing, though, is the 2021 draft is really what turned things around, I think, big time, too. And also Esteury Ruiz, what he has done, and we'll get into, his numbers and everything, is pretty insane. But really, the 2021 draft, I thought the Padres had one of the best drafts of the entire, league. It was really impressive what they've done. Jackson Merril, an underslot first-round guy, has been spectacular out of the gate. They used those savings to get James Wood in the second round and overslot him to sign him away from college. And he has looked like a star. Of course, he got hurt and now just got back. He's on the mend, just had a couple, games at the complex site before he's going to get back into full season ball. But he looks like a freak and looks way better than anybody, thought he would be out of the gate, especially bat to ball wise. Kevin Kopps, who I know you've had on the podcast, really good, safe pick that's going to be a bullpen arm as soon as this year for the Padres. Then they go out and get Jackson Wolf, a guy who I saw a lot of in the Cape Cod League. Tall lefty pitcher who, Ethan Elliott retires. Jackson Wolf replaces him as the just pitchability lefty who has just an uncanny ability to just get outs, and Wolf has better stuff. So I thought they really crushed the draft. And then Max Ferguson in the 5th round was interesting as well. Lucas Dunn has been great. Like, this was just an overall fantastic draft by the Padres. And then, you have guys like Mackenzie Gore making the leap. And then you have guys like, I just across the board, it's been one of those where the system, everyone has really kind of taken that step forward. And even Camposano and Triple just continues to rake. I love what we're seeing from this system as a whole. And Abrams should have never really been forced up. And his prospect status has not really changed for me in terms of, where he ranks up there. Still one of the best prospects in the game. And I think he's kind of showing that with the way he's swinging it back in AAA again. He just really hasn't blinked there much either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know Abrams has gotten some Trey Turner comps, which I, of course, have said this is why the Padres won the Will Myers Trey Turner trade, because they knew in 3 years we were actually just going to draft him again. So they were like, why don't we just get a player out of it? They knew that. AJ Preller opening the third eye.
Myers.
Yeah, a free Will Myers opening the third eye. No, but in all seriousness, I do have a question for you that isn't necessarily as much about just the prospect specific, but just in general about drafting. I'm a little bit curious your thoughts, but like when Jackson Merril was drafted, maybe this is a baseball thing, because I'm used to being like, well, what's the positional need, right? And with the Padres, when Jackson Merril was drafted, I was like, oh, well, or, me and some other fans were like, well, they already have Abrams and they also have that Tatis guy. Why are they spending one of their first picks on a shortstop? I'm wondering, just talk about that, the draft strategy. Is it really just, I don't care who you are, best pitcher available or best player available? Maybe it's just who cares about the position, batter or pitcher? Maybe that matters a little bit. Just talk about that real quick.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a value to I think teams will always say best player available. And I do think that really is the ultimate, like in this example, 100% it was best player available for them in terms of like what they wanted to do, because there's so many layers to MLB's draft too, which I'll get into in a second. I will say that pitching versus hitting, that's real. Like they're not going to just take a hitter because he was the best player available when you are the Angels of the world. The Angels took 20 freaking pitchers in one draft. They're drafting by need there. And if they say, oh no, we went best player available with every single pick, it just happened to be a pitcher. Like no shot. That was them drafting by need, and it's worked. I mean, the Angels have more organizational depth pitching wise than they've had in maybe a decade. But with like the Merril situation, I think it's really interesting because you look at, what MLB teams do with the draft, and a lot of teams have started to underslot their first round pick to overslot in the second and maximize value. So I think for the Padres here, they found a guy in Jackson Merril who they're like, he was a late bloomer, a guy that really like forced himself onto draft radars very late in his high school career. And I think the Padres said, hey, we can snatch this guy up for cheap. And I think we're going to get a lot of value here. And then we'll still have some value on the back end to go get, a James Wood. So almost like trading back in the first round and getting their guy here to trade up in the second round. Like that's kind of what the Padres did. But to answer the specific shortstop thing, when you're looking at high school guys who are really developing well, and like you have no idea what's going to happen with Jackson Merril. He's 6'3", 195 pounds. He could put on another 10 pounds of muscle and end up, moving over to third. And, I know for college coaches, they really like just recruiting as many shortstops as possible, because not everyone's going to play shortstop, but usually those are the guys that can play all over and do different things. And, usually the best player in high school is the shortstop, right? So, I think Merril does have some staying power at short, but ultimately you're drafting the bat and you're drafting a guy that's capable of playing arguably one of the most difficult positions. And if he has to move to second, if he has to move to third, if he has to move to the outfield, that's okay. And we're seeing that even being discussed with CJ Abrams, who's a phenomenal defender at this point at short. We saw it even at the big league level. He was even above average there. And people are saying, do you move him to center? Do you move him here? Do you move him there? JT Realmuto was a shortstop, when he was drafted. So it's just one of those things that I think you don't put too much stock into the current position unless they are a wizard defensively out of high school, which is very rare.
Gotcha. And admittedly, that's where my NBA and NFL fandom comes from, where I'm like, wait, why are we drafted a quarterback if we have, Justin Herbert, for example?
A lot of baseball fans too. I mean, I think it's a common disconnect, and it's just because there's so many years away. Unless you're Kevin Kopps, you're multiple years away.
Yeah, exactly. And unless you have, a Joey Votto, right? And you signed him, let's say it's 8 years ago, and you're like, oh, and we have 2 first base prospects, then maybe you're like, oh, maybe I'll take that second baseman we like, or something like that, maybe. And then in the case of other prospects, you're just like, hey, hopefully they get their confidence back, as Mackenzie Gore did. He's driving people back to the game. Shout out Don Rosillo sharing that story. Really great stuff. But speaking of driving, Aram, really quickly, I want to talk to you guys about cars and specific you can go to help you out with all your car needs. That is rockauto.com, which helps you save time and money. Why choose to spend 30, 50, and even 100% more for the same parts? Yeah, 100%. That's right. Check this out, Aram. You ready for this? You ready?
Yeah.
Honda Odyssey fuel pump. It's usually around $353 from your chain store. It's only $216 from Rock Auto. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just one example.
Why would you pay more for the fuel pump?
I don't know.
Get the fuel pump and they ship it straight to your door.
It's exactly what they do. They ship it to you. Their catalog is really easy to navigate. And it's not just the fuel pumps. They've got motor oil, new carpet, brake parts, tail lamps, whatever you need. So what are you waiting for? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. And of course, everybody, if you're making Locked On Padres your first listen every day, we're free and available on all platforms, including the old tube. And definitely also, what's the word? I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about a guy that you've mentioned in our group chat. Before I ask you, just a couple more questions before we get into the trade. I got to ask you, what's up with this James Wood fellow? Because every time in the group chat, you're really excited about him. Is he that next ultimate, golden egg prospect that Padres fans? Because especially since he's an outfielder, that's a big deal because this Padres team with Trent Grisham really struggling, and he's been turning around slightly lately, but Grisham and Will Myers coming off the books, and then you have Profar and left and whatnot. But tell me, just gush about James Wood real quick.
Yeah, so it was funny because when I was doing the draft analysis, I was looking at James Wood, and you look at the profile here, right? So outfielder out of high school, who's 6'7". 240 pounds. So, you're looking at that profile. What's the first thing that comes to your mind, Javi? Like, does he strike out a lot, right? Like, that's probably the first thing that comes to your mind, right? Yeah. And understandably so. And I think people were more focused on the profile than the actual swing. And I remember looking at him like, this is a pretty direct swing for a big dude, and his body control is really good. And there was that clip of him going yard in the Texas Rangers stadium in a high school game. I don't know if it was a showcase or a national or All-American. I don't remember what it was, but it was insane, the sound off the bat. And I'm like, okay, power's there. Everyone knew that, but I think people really underestimated the bat to ball. And to answer your question, it's early, right? We only saw 14 games in low A. We saw 26 games at the complex last year. But I do think that he has shown us a lot of just how freakish he is. Because not only is his swing pretty smooth and repeatable, he's pretty fast. I would say he's close to a plus runner. And right now playing good defense in center field. And I really want to tread lightly with this, but at the same time, how many 6'7" guys are there that are capable of playing center field? The only guy is really Aaron Judge. And I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Judge because Aaron Judge is, a god among men right now. But I think there's that level of behemoth of a man combined with athleticism that we don't really see. And I think that gives him a chance to be one of those golden egg prospects. We'll have to see how he hits against, better level of pitching. He's still just 19, but even through those 14 games, we saw a little bit of everything. He hit 3 home runs. He walked more than he struck out. He stole 4 bases. He played good defense in center. every at bat I went back and watched. I was impressed with the strike zone awareness was good. And I'm like, whoa, this guy is about 2 years ahead of where everybody thought he was. And I think he could be this draft's Jordan Walker potentially, meaning that Jordan Walker had the same thing of the Cardinals. Big dude, crazy power out of high school. Oh, how much is he going to swing and miss? Well, he's already in double A now and is, still only 20, 21 years old. So I think Wood could be the golden egg. And I'm really interested to see how he continues to hit as, he gets more ABs under his belt.
Absolutely. And you brought up Aaron Judge real quick, and I'm going to ask a very rookie noob question about prospect evaluation and whatnot right now. But I'm wondering, does it feel like there's been a little, and this all, by the way, could be because I was in the New York tri-state area and I heard about this Jason Dominguez fellow. I'm wondering, does it feel like more casual baseball fans have been like really grasping onto builds lately? It feels like that for me just because of the Dominguez thing where everyone immediately is like, oh my God, this is Judge. Because Judge, I still remember when he was coming up and it was like, oh, this is going to be a guy that hits 240 and he walks a tiny bit, strikes at Joey Gallo. You know what I mean? Like he was going to be that. And instead he came into the league, was like, yeah, he strikes out a lot, but who cares? He walks and hits balls 500 feet. I'm wondering, has that been like a little bit of a trend lately in drafts and whatnot, or at least for fan perspective?
I think there's always that gravitation towards the monsters of, because you look at some of the best hitters in baseball and, like the Giancarlo Stantons even of the world that hit those tape measure shots. But you look at a lot of the top prospects, it's like, either they fly and put up, ridiculous numbers across the board, or you can dream on the power. And I think that's the thing is like, you have these guys that are putting up crazy power numbers and you just dream on, oh, maybe he can cut down the K rate. Maybe he can cut down the K rate. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a cyclical thing in baseball too, though, where now you're seeing hit tool guys that you're hoping the power can progress into. And I would say CJ Abrams is kind of in that department. Already 5 home runs in AAA, by the way. Like he was a guy with crazy tools that you're like, maybe the power will get there. And I think it's starting to get there. It's one of those things though in the prospect world where I think a lot of fans just see a 6'7" dude and they're like, whoa, what will it look like if it comes together? And dreaming on somebody like that is usually how the hype just starts to grow. And I bet James Wood's going to be that guy. I guarantee fans will gravitate towards James Wood as more clips start to come out of a 6'7" guy going yard, opposite field.
Absolutely. I know that was a little bit of a weird question. It's just, again, maybe the other sports in me where like I watch football a lot. And ever since Mahomes came into the league, you notice that teams are drafting these super arm type quarterbacks. And then they're like, the rest will come. You know what I mean? That's been like a latest trend. I was wondering if something like that happens in baseball. But last prospect question before we get into the trade, the specific details. Padres pitching prospects. Because the Padres, they've got an interesting pitching situation right now. Mackenzie Gore has been, he's hit. Like if he didn't hit, we'd be a little bit more concerned, whatnot. But Mike Clevenger, Sean Manaea, and Joe Musgrove currently not under contract for next year. And then Blake Snell, we don't know exactly what we're getting out of him. He's under contract for next year. And then Yu Darvish, solid pitcher in my opinion. Someone left a mean comment to me the other day saying that I hate him. I don't. I'm just his strikeout rate's lower. Like, what do you want from me? But he's under contract for another year and older. Yeah. So I'm wondering, what's the pitching situation looking like for the Padres prospect system?
That is the more deficient area. I'll be honest. And I think everybody knows that, right? I love what they're building offensively. And I think there's a reason why we've seen the Padres be way more aggressive in building that rotation rather than, going out and attacking the outfield situation right now. I think they have more to figure out there. And pitching wise, I think they have a lot of things that they need to figure out. And I think the next draft, kind of circling back to our original conversation, I think that we're going to see this Padres organization go a lot heavier in the pitching department in this coming draft. But, I'm a big fan of Robert Gasser. And if I'm making a trade here, we assume the Padres are going to make a trade. I try to hold on to Robert Gasser because outside of Gasser, Jackson Wolf, and a few other arms that have looked all right. I like Matt Waldron. I think he's a sneaky good arm too. It's pretty thin in the pitching department. Yes, they have, Morahone coming back from injury eventually. Ryan Weathers is still 22 years old. And, I don't think he's going to continue to struggle forever. The guy showed that he can hang at the big league level. I think he's just got some things he needs to sort out and kind of get right again from that injury. But I would say the pitching's still a little bit thin. They need Robert Gasser to make that leap, I would say. And I think he can. You look at the numbers on the surface, they look kind of ugly given that he has a 5.05 ERA, but 51 and 2/3 innings. He's punched out 68. He's only walked 17. I think he's had a lot of bad luck. The defense isn't great so far behind him, hasn't been helping him too much. And he's not walking guys that much. His FIP's at 3.11. And the unique release that he has, the ball flies out of his hand. It's a lot of swing and miss stuff. Slider is disgusting. Changeup is good. Like, he's going to be fine. I think this is a dude that needs to kind of make that leap for them. And it'll be a good test to see, how that Padres prospect development on the pitching side is, with some of the overhaul that they've had there. I'm very interested to see how they do with Robert Gasser. Great identification there to pick him up, 71st overall in the 2021 draft. And now how can you develop him? Because it's thin. It's definitely thin. So I would look towards him and Jackson Wolf and see if those guys can make the leap.
Yeah, it feels like they have a lot of interesting guys who can be, your back end of the rotation maybe, but it doesn't feel like they have another Gore in there, at least as of right now.
No.
We'll see with Gasser, who I will say, though, he passes the Javier Reyes Locked On Padres eye test. And the Javier Reyes Locked On Padres eye test is
I was going to say, well, what's the criteria of that eye test?
What's the criteria of it is a pitcher with the last name Gasser. I'm in. He's going to be great.
Wait till you see how he throws. He throws weird.
It's
great. It's really weird. It's like low 3/4 or like medium 3/4 and just rises out of his hand. So that's good for the eye test. I mean,
I love that.
Forget the numbers.
I love that. Eye test passed. But before we pass into the next, finally, we got to talk about this trade because I'm really, really excited for this. But I love talking prospects with you. Really quickly, guys, let me talk to you about jewelry. That's right. Not necessarily always what you expect from your boy because I'm not a jewelry expert, but whatever they want, whatever they need, fine jewelry, wedding jewelry, engagement rings, bands, cocktail rings, whatever the heck. I don't know anything about this stuff, but Blue Nile has you covered. For your special someone, maybe this is something that you may want to get them for their birthday. It's the summer, people like to do fun things in the summer. Check that out. Make your moment sparkle with BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners, you can get $50 off of your purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement stuff. Use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. I love surprises. That's very good stuff. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Remember, that is code Locked On, everybody. Let's move on, Aram. Let's talk about this trade. We got to do it. We got to talk about the trade over at justbaseball.com, and I recommend everyone checking out the article. It's funny because Aram, before we started recording, decided to humiliate me and make me feel really bad. Despite the fact that I talked about him about being incredibly self-conscious about my baseball knowledge, I pitched him a potential mock trade beforehand, and he said, "You're an idiot. Like, why would they do that?" Whatever. Whether or not I convince him after the call to let me write about that for the site, we'll see. But the expert has mocked a certain player to the Padres. Would you like to introduce that mock trade, sir?
You make me sound like such a piece of you-know-what. I just said don't do it. And then you said, no, I'm not bringing it up on the podcast, but I'm going to pitch it as an article. And I was like, well, I'm glad we see where the standards are, right? This is too dumb for the podcast, but it's perfect for justbaseball.com. Let's fire that over there. But no, so I really enjoy doing these articles, man. And I implore you to do them too, in terms of firing up some trades. Mm-hmm. But it's fun because no matter what people say, I mean, would you not say going into this season that besides the whole lockout BS, it was one of the most wild, fun times in baseball in a while up until the lockout deadline of everyone just getting their trades in. it was an
So
editorial
fun.
nightmare, but blessing at the same time, right? Like it was like,
Mhm.
am I getting all of these trades? I've never had that issue before. So much fun, and I think the deadline is a softer version of that, and we're getting closer to that, right? Like we're 6 weeks away from the
Yeah,
deadline, and
I
I
know.
look at the Padres situation. I think if you told me before this season, and I always said I think the Padres we're gonna play well this year, even without Tatis. But if you told me that they'd be where they are right now, with Tatis hurt and not playing up until this point, and some of the other things that have happened with the Padres so far, I would have said that you take that every day of the week. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think where the Padres are at right now is great, given that you don't have one of the best players in baseball right now playing
Yeah.
for you. And I think that's the window that Preller needs to go make that move, right? And like he sees that and he's like, okay, let's push this team over the top. And that's why I wanted Austin Hayes. I wanted
There
to
it
find
is.
a target for the Padres that doesn't totally deplete the farm. It's like one of those guys that you can get without fully giving up everything, but it's still going to take a pretty penny here to get somebody like Austin Hayes, because at the end of the day, he's controllable. He's having a fantastic year. And, I think he really does help the Padres situation in the outfield a good deal, while also, helping them financially over the next couple years with his
Yes.
control. And some people might not realize how good Austin Hayes has been, because no one really pays attention to the Orioles that much, especially if you're in the West Coast and in the NL. Why would you? But 290, 354, 454 slash line so far this year.
Hmm.
And he's fast. He's 26. He's not playing great defense this year, but I think he's capable of good defense, and has
Okay.
even been able to play center field in a pinch. And in the trade, I went a little bit pitching heavy. I would probably, after thinking about it more, Javi, swap out Gasser for a bat rather than going with what the package we went with. But overall, I like the gist of the trade.
Interesting. Interesting. Austin Hayes for the Padres, Ryan Weathers, Robert Gasser, Esteury Ruiz, saying that you would thinking back rather swap out Gasser. It's probably because of my eye test. I mean, just admit it.
Yes, yeah.
Admit it.
Well, once I heard he's Javi Pano's eye test approved.
It just changes everything, right? It just changes everything.
Wait till Preller finds out.
Oh, I know, right? And one of the things that you mentioned in the article is like, yeah, I've never known much of an AJ Preller to sit silent. I mean, even this past offseason, and one thing you mentioned really quick before we get into that is the money thing. And I just want to address, because for fans, because sometimes they're like, what are you talking about? It's just money. Agreed. But considering that the Padres have never been a high spending organization and they actually have become that, I'm not necessarily thinking, oh, yeah, ownership is being cheap right now. Instead,
No,
yes, I think that they should absolutely. This isn't heck, maybe even your team, Miami Marlins, right? This isn't Oakland A's. This isn't one of those teams that has been around there and they're like, actually, we're the Milwaukee Brewers and we'd rather just trade for Andrew McCutchen and that'll be our big bet. No. We love Rowdy Tellez. Let's not even give Freddie Freeman a call. That's right. I'm obligated to hate the Brewers every episode. But,
yeah,
with the Padres, it is a thing worth pointing out. I've talked about this on my show that what would you rather have? Darvish for as much money as he has right now, or you get to have Eric Lauer, you keep Luis Urias as well, and then maybe you keep all those assets you traded for Darvish in the first place. Obviously, that's a perfect world, but I'm just saying that's why I think this comes into play, because the Padres are spending a lot of money, and clearly that affected them at least a little bit this past offseason, where they can't go out and spend on Nick Castellanos 5 years, $100 million, right?
yeah, and it also affords you the ability to, like, down the line go and be able to sign some free agents, knowing that, hey, we have
Mhm.
Austin Hayes with 3 years of control after this. So we know that our outfield, at least at one spot, is going to be cost effective and cost efficient. Looking at what they would do in terms of what they could trade to go get him, it's tough because I don't really want to deal Merril. I wouldn't, and I would say this though, like Hassel, Abrams, and Wood are kind of in the untouchable department for me.
Mhm.
So I like the idea of Weathers being a change of scenery guy. It really depends on, I guess, what the eye of the beholder values him at. I think he's a 22-year-old that's already proven he can pitch at the big league level, and whatever he's struggling with right now, I think he can figure that out and get through it and be just fine.
Mhm.
He also has, the track record, also the pedigree. His father was a big league pitcher. I think he's going to be just fine. But I would use him as the centerpiece because he really doesn't fit in right now. And I just would rather not trade Gasser. Esteury Ruiz, it's kind of where you stand on what he's doing right now. This is one of the best seasons right now in the minor leagues. That like he's having one of the best campaigns. But is this lightning in a bottle, or do you think he figured it out? I think it's a little bit of both. I think he's a legitimately good prospect. But would you rather trade Jackson Merril, or would you rather trade Esteury Ruiz? That's the question there. I think you could flip flop either. I think it really depends on what people think and how they feel about it. Merrill is going to be several years away, but Ruiz is a guy that kind of just put it all together this year, and it's kind of interesting to see what we've seen. I would probably throw in one of the other, offensive young prospects like Victor Acosta or somebody like that. And instead
Mears,
of Gasser, if possible, Joshua Mears, if somebody is interested in a guy with that much power, but also, some of the most swing and miss in the minor leagues, period. Eggy Rosario, even maybe if somebody's interested in somebody like him. But yeah, the rough gist is I think Austin Hayes is kind of in that sweet spot of not quite elite enough where you have to part with a Hassel or one of these other guys, but also still really darn good where you can make it happen. I'd be okay trading a Jackson Merril, even though I really like him. But Luis Campusano could be a guy that ultimately the Padres end up dealing to, and he could be a guy that ends up moving in a certain deal. It wouldn't be in this one, obviously, because they have that Adley dude. But yeah, I think there's a way with the position players and around Ryan Weathers where you can get this deal done without tapping into your elite prospects. And even though it's not a Hall of Fame name, I think Austin Hayes helps in a lot of ways for the Padres.
Oh, so now it's okay to trade Campusano. Okay.
Yes,
anyway.
For Austin Hayes, yes. For the guy that you were floating, no. But
I'm in. This is going to be my thing. I'm making this my bit. But I agree with everything that you're saying, right? I think that I do wonder though. Do you think that he could be plugged in right field?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Then that's because right now, Will Myers' situation, love him to death, but he's kind of in a weird like rehab. We don't exactly, it's like a weird injury. They're electing to go the rehab route. And that scares me because they've done that many times for some other players. Shout out to Nelson Lamet. And that hasn't exactly worked. So Will Myers might not necessarily be a guy that's back immediately. Not to mention he's not going to be back for next year. Probably they're not going to sign him for another 20 million or whatever it is. Right. So that's just an interesting thing here. I'm curious, and I actually don't mind, and I said this on the podcast just for you to hate me more, right? Where I was like, I actually think Nomar Mazara as like a fill-in guy until the deadline I'm kind of cool with that because he was doing well in the minors and he hit for some power in past years. I was like, yeah, for like a month, yeah, I actually kind of like that. But I think the Padres, even with the Mazara thing and even with Myers and all that stuff, right? Even with Jurickson Profar being as good as he's been this year, right? Really solid defender and left for the most part. Did make an error the other day, but he's been solid. He's never been like a huge strikeout guy, which is really nice. See, I'm kind of buying into him. But aside from that, the outfield depth is really, really lacking. And I think that's what the Padres really need, right? And I think that's why Juan Soto is why Padres fans shut up. I know everybody wants Juan Soto, but I think that's why Padres fans were like, yeah, obviously, yeah, let's go trade for Juan Soto. It's like, I'm just curious, what would it take really quickly? Because I feel like you kind of
everything.
Required. So is it Abrams, Hassel, Campusano, Gore, and then throw in
I think that honestly, like that's pretty damn good.
It's not bad, right?
See, these trades piss me off because like because like theoretically in value, like it, I guess that's not enough, but like screw that. like these guys could end up actually being as much value as a Juan Soto, which is crazy to say, but at the end of the day, Juan Soto plays an average right field, is a phenomenal one of the best hitters maybe of this generation. He has a chance to be, but he only hits 4, maybe 5 times a game. Are you really willing to trade, a legit starter every 5th day that's young and controllable, like a potential star in TJ Abrams, a potential all-star in Robert Hassel, a really solid catcher in Campusano? I know the word potential is big here, and Soto is what he is, but like, it's just one of those where I don't know if you like the value required to get him. It sets you up for a very difficult situation in terms of, there's a very good chance you could regret that one. And it's tough. Obviously you go get Soto if you can get him, but I don't even know if we've seen a trade like that. Like, I don't know what it would look like. So those just piss me off because either someone's gonna be like, that's not enough, or it's like, are you crazy? We'd give up all that for one player, and it's just like, okay, I don't know what to do. But one of the reasons why I like a Hayes type of dude, real quick, is that, I really want to see, and I think the Padres are gonna, my opinion, I think they're going to shell out a lot of that money that's freed up from like Will Myers and other guys to try to keep this staff intact. I think they want to pay Musgrove, and I think Musgrove's probably very happy in San Diego. Things have really, taken that next step there with him, and he is their guy. And I think a lot of that money is going to go towards locking those dudes up, and that's why I think you need to go cost efficient in the outfield, and that's why I'm a big fan of what we've seen there. But I also could see them going for an expiring dude like an Ian Happ. And Ian Happ could be someone that makes sense too, as just a great target for them that instantly helps the offensive situation. And I actually misspoke. Happ has one more year of control after this one, so Happ might be a good target that's not too expensive, that helps the outfield as well as a switch hitter that's hitting way better from the right side and brings some things also. So like there's some low cost options that I think instantly upgrade. And then an expiring guy also, Andrew Benintendi, that could be cheap and good to go get as well. I would be floored if they don't go get an outfield guy. I think the market's kind of ripe for the picking of affordable dudes. And I think that's exactly what we could see Preller going after.
Yeah, and he likes to be aggressive. I love the trade, man. I think it's really well thought out, and another thing I'm scared of is the Joey Gallo potential. I think Preller is just like
that would be so bad.
I think he's just salivating. That multi-home run game he had the other day. Oh, I know Preller was. I know it for a fact. I know he was oh my gosh, because they've been so in on him for so many years now. I mean,
which is interesting.
I brought this up on a previous podcast where like the community episode where there's like a dark timeline. The darkest timeline, we're at like number 5 or 4.5 of the Padres former players. Your Cal Quantrells of the world, and no, not necessarily Cal Quantrill. He's been okay. He's actually given up a
Ty France.
But like the Ty Frances, right? And all these guys, obviously we talked about Trey Turner earlier with Will Myers, but like the dark timeline where I don't think I am currently a part of Just Baseball. I actually think I retired from baseball coverage, is the Mackenzie Gore or the Abrams, which literally was floated, not by the team, but that was the rumors that that's what the Rangers were asking for, that if they gave up that, and I'm watching this guy hit $150. I mean, no, like I'm dead serious. I think that could have been it for me. I think that could have been it. But
yeah, I don't think that's happening. I think you're golden. I think you're okay. The cost for Gallo is going down. It's reverse gas prices right now. Yeah, it's rock auto like right now for Joey Gallo. Right. If you call the Yankees, they'll ship them straight to your door for 20, 30, 50, 100% less than the chain stores.
Oh man. But anyway, dude, love the Austin Hayes trade. Anytime you have any other trades for the Padres that will help my team, of course, you are welcome on. And anytime you have any updates about the Padres farm, I'd love to talk to you. As always, everybody, Aram's great. Go check out Just Baseball. Go check out the Call Up. Really great prospect podcast.
Oh yeah, we talked to Robert Hassel. We interviewed Robert Hassel. Come check that out. Was just about
to bring that up. Go check out Robert Hassel's interview.
Awesome
future
guy.
top level guy in the Just Baseball system. So go check out all that stuff. I'm going to be writing about Joe Musgrove soon. Just Baseball is a great website. Of course, everybody, with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow on YouTube as well. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friday Faithful homies, take care.